Welcome to another episode of Cooking with Lewis and Clark.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, today we have a very special episode of Cooking with Lewis and Clark.
Mr. Graham here with Cooking at Home with Lewis and Clark.
This time we are doing quarantine at home edition. I'm Mr. Raymond. Today we are going to make hardtack, or as Lewis and Clark would have referred to in their journals as crackers.
Where we're going to be making some hardtack.
We are going to be making some biscuits, also known as hardtack.
Hardtack is just a mixture of flour and water, and it's going to be baked into basically a cracker. And it was the main staple of diet for navies and armies in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century in lieu of any type of perishable food.
So before we get going here, I just want you to picture something in your mind. Think about going to Texas Roadhouse and getting those nice, fresh, warm, buttery biscuits. And picture the exact opposite, because these things more than likely are going to be awful.
Because I'm not a history teacher, I don't have to stick squarely to all the historical context, like the rules and all that good stuff. I teach science, so we'll take a little bit of liberties with it. So making hardtack at home, step one, put in your earbuds, on your favorite Pandora station, on your phone, get your favorite drink here. I got some coffee here.
So, our first ingredient we're going to use, some whole wheat flour. The second ingredient we're going to use, some all-purpose flour. Third ingredient we're going to use for some flavor, some salt. And last but not least, some water.
We have some whole wheat flour and regular all-purpose flour. I chose King Arthur's flour because, King Arthur's is historical. Okay, we also got some water that came right out of the faucet. I've got a mixing bowl, and the mixers are going to be my hands. And I also have, the recipe calls for a teaspoon of salt, but come on guys, just like you have peanut butter and jelly, Batman, Robin, you got Raymond, Graham, and Gimbi, you have to have a little salt and pepper. So I'm going to take a little liberties today and just add a little bit of pepper into my hardtack too.
Now it's important to remember, you could stay on step one just as long as you like. Totally fine. I'll be back in just a moment.
So, step one, take the flour, put it in the bowl. Step two, take the flour, put it in the bowl. Step three, a Mr. Teaspoon of salt. Doesn't that look good?
And we are just simply going to take our two forms of flour, and we're going to put that in there, set that off to the side. I got my salt and pepper, and I'm going to push that in there real good. And then I'm just gonna mix. Make sure that's in there. Yeah, that looks all right. We can already tell we're making a mess.
So right here in this bowl, I've mixed 2 cups of general purpose flour and 2 whole cups of whole grain flour. Take yourself some salt, get yourself 1 teaspoon of salt. And because we're not really gonna stick to the recipe as prescribed, we're gonna take a little bit of sugar. Don't know if this is a good idea or not, but we're going to put a little bit of sugar in there, make a little bit of sweet hardtack. You're going to add 1.5 cups of water, standard tap variety of H2O. Have it in there. Okay, you're taking a bowl.
And last but not least, our 2.5 cups of water.
Then I'm taking the water, 1.5 cups of water, and we're just gonna dump it in there.
So after you combine all your ingredients, they should look like this. I'm getting hungry. And now we're gonna mix this all together.
Once you've done that, you take your hands. Now, I'm sure Lewis and Clark would have used a fancy mixer, because that's what they had back, like roughing it, walking through the wilderness. But I'm just gonna use my hands. You may have noticed that on my hands I have a little bit of black paint. I was painting yesterday. I tried to scrub this off. I think it's gonna add a little bit of flavor to the hardtack, so that should be just fine. So you're gonna just reach your hands in here and just knead it up really nice. This is just going to be fantastic. Just use your hands just like they would have back in the day.
Now, how are you going to say, Mr. Raymond, how does this differ from a pancake or from waffles or something like that? Well, let me tell you, young grasshoppers. pancakes and waffles and stuff like that have got eggs and sugar. It's got vanilla in it. This is just flour and water, and that is how it's going to differ.
The directions say not to go too crazy, but I can tell you right now that it's getting harder and harder to mix. Now you notice I didn't put any leavening agent in this. Ain't no sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, or anything like that. That means when this is done, this is going to be harder than college algebra. It's going to be really hard.
It's got the texture of kind of like a really lackluster cement, and we're just going to mix that as best as we can.
It's a very weird feeling.
You know why I'm making this video? Because I needed dough.
So I've been kneading this dough for a really long time. I think we're coming up on 5 hours, and it's still not there yet. The thing with hardtack is that it can last for a very, very long time. It would have been ideal for Lewis and Clark to have hardtack with them because their trip was so long. Hardtack was also used extensively in the Civil War as kind of a precursor to our modern MREs that the military uses. So I'm gonna keep kneading, and I'll check back in later.
All right, so now I have got a hunk of dough, flour, water. If you make this correctly, you can eat it right away, but it was used to feed armies and navies because it was made correctly and stored correctly in a dry container. It would last not just for days, not just for weeks, but for months, and then in some cases, years. If stored incorrectly, hardtack, when it was opened, would be full of worms and mold and all kinds of wonderful extra forms of protein that they weren't encountering on.
The directions after that say that after you mix it all together, let it sit for a few moments, then we're going to put it in a baking pan.
All right, so we're finally ready, and boy does that look good. So next, we're gonna put it on a baking sheet.
You know, I'm going to do something I didn't think about doing, but I'm going to reach in here and grab a rolling pin and just kind of flatten this out here on the counter. Oh yeah, it looks good.
We're gonna kind of flatten it out a little bit. Now, once we flatten it out into a rectangle shape or a square shape, either one will be fine. Lewis and Clark use both shapes.
And I gotta get it to about the thickness of a half an inch. It's supposed to look like a rectangle and be the thickness of half an inch.
So we've got the hardtack squished down in this baking sheet. This is definitely going to ruin this pan, so make sure you get a pan that you don't like very much, because it's going to ruin it. The directions called to squish it down to about 1/4 inch, so I'm going to put my measurement gauge 2000 on this to make sure it's at 1/4 inch. Yep, that's at 1/4 inch.
Take our little thing there. We are going to put it on our tray. I don't know, does that look like half an inch to all y'all? Now, this is supposed to be like a cracker, which means that I'm obviously not going to eat all of this, and this wouldn't be made to feed one soldier, but multiple soldiers. So let's just get it a little bit thinner.
Once we get it flattened out, we're gonna take a knife. Now, knives are sharp. Be careful, just like fire. Fire's not a toy, neither are knives.
Now we're going to score it. Basically, make it so you can break it off into chunks, almost like you're slicing a cake or something, or brownies ahead of time.
And we're going to score this. Now, if you're following along at home and you're not doing as well, don't be hard on yourself. I have been cooking for many, many decades, and I have been called the Gordon Ramsay of my generation.
And what the directions say to do is to take a fork and perforate the top. It's kind of interesting because, like I mentioned it, there's no leavening agents. So there'll be there'll be very little carbon dioxide being released from this. There'll probably be a little bit. But that was part of the directions. And don't be afraid if part of this comes up in clumps. I'm sure that's just fine. Just the way Lewis and Clark would have done it.
And then the idea is for this to be dried out. And so to do that, we're going to liberally poke holes in it so that the heat gets down into the dough and dries it out. It's exactly what a saltine cracker looks like. Ladies and gentlemen, these will not taste like saltine crackers.
Make sure you got your good dentures in when you eat this, because just like the name implies, it is gonna be hard. I mean, really hard. So.
All right, we're going to take our flattened flour and we're going to put it in the oven at 325 for 50. That's 50 minutes. And we'll see what happens to it when it comes out.
There we go. We're gonna put it in the oven at 325 for 50 minutes, and when we come back, well, it's gonna be something.
Now, next we're gonna put it in the oven for about 50 minutes at 325 degrees. So, see you then.
Welcome back, everybody. Our hardtack has been in the oven for about 50 minutes, and as you can see, the oven's about to beep. Now, when taking something out of the oven, make sure you use an oven mitt. Safety first, guys. And if you want to get a really cool oven mitt like this, just go to Pinky's Designs. Pinky's Designs can help you with an oven mitt. Oh, there's some hardtack.
Our hardtack is ready. As you notice, it looks almost exactly the same coming out of the oven as it did going in.
Now, since you can eat this warm right out of the oven, but before we do that, we're just gonna break it up into little chunks. And Civil War soldiers especially would not have eaten this warm out of the oven. This is something that they would have preserved and carried along with them. And so we're gonna do a couple of things. We're going to put some on the rack to cool. And we're gonna eat one more. Let's just do it like this. So we scored it, which means it should be able to break off pretty easy.
All right, so finally, our biscuits or hardtack is out of the oven. So let's cut off a piece and see what it tastes like.
It's really hard. If you were planning to make a recipe to impress your friends, this is not it. And if you're gonna make this for your family for dinner, you're gonna want to have the number of your favorite pizza shop on speed dial right away.
I have this cloth here because what we're gonna do is once this is all cooled down, like completely cooled, I'm gonna wrap a couple of pieces of it in this cloth, which is how it would have been stored, and then we're gonna put it in an airtight container. For us, it's just gonna be a Tupperware container. And then a couple of days from now, or tomorrow, or sometime, we will just open it up and we will see how it tastes cooled down and when it's really hard. Kind of tough. It's meant to be tough. That's how it's preserved. This is Civil War hardtack or crackers. Ugh.
I can tell you that when you taste it,
That's what it is. It's hardtack. It basically is cooked flour.
well, that's not good.
All right, so right off the bat, I'm getting hints of stale, week-old pizza crust with just a hint of cardboard on the aftertaste.
The sugar did not help one bit, although you can smell the sugar just a little bit.
All in all, I would say this is a pretty successful baking episode.
All right. Well, we're gonna take a break from this, and we'll be back tomorrow with the cool down version to see what it's like. Yeah.
What do you think, Kenzie?
Hey, I want to welcome you back to Cooking with Lewis and Clark, and I'm very, very excited to welcome back, even though this is our virtual episode, and we're making hardtack, I am glad to have Mr. Graham, Mr. Gimbi back with me. I want to welcome for the first time Mr. Blake. And so, yesterday we made hardtack, which we talked about being a staple of armies and navies during the 17th, 18th, and 19th century, just because they lacked basic food, produce, perishable goods. And so I've let my hardtack dry, and it is cooked and it is baked, and I couldn't think of a better place to enjoy a good old piece of hardtack with some brothers and some friends other than Gettysburg National Battlefield. We're sitting on top of Big Round Top, and I have got some Civil War hardtack for each of you guys. Mr. Gimbi, you get a big piece.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Graham, hardtack is, just like its name, very hard substance. You can hear it on that rock. There's not much give to it. And in the 18th, 19th century, when dental hygiene wasn't at its best, biting this and eating this would have been a very difficult thing. So it would have been soaked in coffee, or it would have been like softened with some bacon grease, some bacon fat, to make it
Not so hard.
digestible.
We don't have any of that here.
So we're going to go ahead and enjoy our hardtack here on the Gettysburg National Battlefield. Bon appetit, gentlemen.
Delicious.
Is it good? It's not hot.
It's not hot.
All right. Well, there you have it.
Hardtack.
Hardtack. Just like Lewis and Clark did, and just like every other soldier or sailor in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century did. I'm Mr. Raymond, and I'm so happy to be with my friends here at Gettysburg. I want to thank you for watching Cooking with Lewis and Clark.